I have a tendency to hit click before I proofread.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are here. We are live. So I want to welcome everyone. Happy Sunday. I hope everyone's having an amazing day. Welcome to Sand and Shores. We are having an incredible conversation today with some amazing experts delving into a very timely conversation. Sand and Shores is a platform that tells true stories that have a powerful effect on real lives. And I can't think of a situation more important, impactful, and powerful as the one that we are going to get into today. So my name is Tonya McKenzie. I am the founder and happy to be here with my hostesses and this panel of experts that is going to discuss have a conversation about some things that, I think it's very important that we peel back the onion. And this will likely be the first of two conversations. We have to get a little deeper into how the media plays its role. But let's get started with our guests. Introduce yourself and talk about your experience with sexual assault in the military and what you are involved in now. Kitty? I can't, you're muted, babe.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Kitty Harris. I am a Navy veteran and publicist and the founder of KLH Media Group, public relations agency here in San Diego. My role has been supporting survivors in advocacy and sharing the importance of how media can play a major role as being an ally for our veterans and veterans community.
Very good. Ms. Teresa?
I'm Teresa Crossman, and I'm a United States Army veteran. And I experienced MST in 1980 as a brand new recruit. And when I got out, I did the normal PTSD crazy stuff. And back then they had no idea what MST was about, or military sexual trauma. There was no label for it. And women, especially, Heath might fill me in on that later, but women just were not allowed or basically to have PTSD. It was just really crazy trying to file for all that. So what I did was eventually, when they recognized us and gave us an 800 number where we could file and everything before computers, old school, I filed, and I found that I had no emotional support. And so what I decided to do once I won my claim was that I would assist other veterans with their claims and provide emotional support as a peer. And I've been doing this since 1994. I continue to do this, and as a nonprofit through TNT Leadership. And I also co-founded another Veterans for Leadership program, nonprofit for Veterans for Leadership, and that will provide scholarships for veterans to get to the next level. And I believe the final tools for MST that I think is needed in our recovery. And our goal is to get this in the transition process from active duty to veteran/civilian. So thank you.
So appreciate you being here, Teresa. And quick story, I met Teresa through one of her events and introduced her to my younger sister, who is a victim of military sexual assault that was not getting the services that she needed. So through the work that Teresa does, she, who is now retired from the military, now receives all of the benefits that she should through the military based on her trauma. So Teresa is amazing. And I've been able to experience her work firsthand. Love it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. Heath.
Thanks for letting me be here. I'm a United States Navy veteran. Just recently, I've been able to say that. I am also a military sexual trauma survivor. I joined the Navy in '88. I spent 10 months on board a ship being assaulted, abused by 6 fellow shipmates.
Hmm.
Not believed, disbelieved, whatever you want to call it. I was kicked out with other than honorable discharge. I spent the next 20 years stuck in a bottle. Didn't know I had PTSD, didn't know what PTSD was, never even heard of it.
Mm.
And, I was 17, 18 years old when this happened. So 2009, I thankfully became sober. Since that time, I have been a very outspoken advocate on the subject of military sexual assault. I strongly believe that this should never be characterized as a gender issue because it does happen to men and women. I will always say that no matter where I am, because for me, that is the most important thing that people need to hear. I have been featured in a lot of national media. In 2018, I had my discharge overturned. The Navy gave me a full honorable discharge. I am one of the few veterans that, with an other than honorable discharge, that received service connection for post-traumatic stress disorder. I did my own claim. I go to law schools now throughout the United States, veterans courses, and explain to them how I did my claim. And also I discuss my discharge upgrade issues. I've been on Capitol Hill changing legislation ideas for, since 2010. My dear friend Brigette and I have been on NBC Nightly News over claim issues. I'm on numerous boards that pertain to sexual assault. I don't know. Unfortunately, I get around. I also speak since 2015. I go to military installations all across the world, and I share my experiences and discuss change on how they could change the culture within the military. Not that it really is working as fast as I would like to see, but I know it makes a difference because at least once a week I get somebody that emails me about what they went through and thanking me for talking, so that way they're able to get help. And for me, this is a very important platform because even though I've been in the media, I know how much media I've tried being in, and I see how much this issue has been so underspoken. Unless you're somebody that's in Congress or a person in power, your story really does not get heard. And I want to change that. And I hopefully didn't take up all my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Brigette.
Hey, thank you so much for having me today. It's an honor to be here on this panel with so many amazing people who are working in the community for so many years. I started, so I'm an Army veteran. I'm kind of like Heath when he says he doesn't say it. He had his reasons for not saying he's a veteran. It took me a long time to begin to even feel the words veteran, even after working in the community for the number of years I've been doing this. So I'm a Gulf War era veteran. I was sexually harassed, raped multiple times, and exited from the military during the Gulf War. And so most of you who know that there was a stop loss at that time, it would seem to you that it would be amazing for me to have been exited out of the military. But when they want you out, they get you out as quickly and as quietly as they can. And so April 1991 is when I was discharged from the military with 18 months still on my enlistment. So again, these are just all of these facts that, I think later on make things make more sense as you hear other parts of my narrative. So I serve on multiple boards. Heath and I serve on the board with Protect Our Defenders. I started with them in 2012 or 13. I've testified before Senate, testified for different committees related to women and military sexual trauma, related to the challenges and the after effects of sexual trauma. Because when people use the term transition, they perceive that it means you got a date, you got out, and then that then everything is over. But transitioning for military sexual trauma survivors is a lifelong process. You're still learning how to adjust. One of my mentors, Susan Avelia Smith, she was the first person who ever said the word military sexual trauma to me, and challenged me back in like 2005 or 6 to really explore what that meant. And it took me 5 or 6 more years to even get involved in military sexual trauma, because I literally was scared for my life because of the repeated attempts on my life while I was serving, and I didn't feel like it was going to stop, so to speak. And how I'm involved in media and technology, I understood very early that if I wanted to get the message out, being a woman who was Black, who was disabled, and homeless, I was going to have to leverage opportunities that different agencies were using to bring the narrative of women who served forward. I was going to have to leverage those opportunities, those media opportunities, earned media, to get in front of the camera and talk and have the conversation. And then once people recognize that I was a credible source, then to build from that. And so not only have I worked in film and television, I worked behind the scenes in making sure that panels are sourced for events that are going on around the country where they want a diverse population and they don't understand that veteran is a part of that diversity, women are part of that diversity. So those are just different areas. I am a digital tech innovator. And so that's, when I came on Facebook and started building these groups and communities to support the networks of women who were disjointed, because when I came, women groups were, all over the place, but they were small and disjointed and no one knew about each other. And so I made it part of my mission to connect every single woman, every single group, every single military sexual trauma survivor to one another. I didn't come into the community to be a icon or beacon. I wanted to be a connector, and that's what I still do. And so I leverage digital technology and also helping women to understand how to use those tools to better tell their narrative, but to also how to get their claims won, and also to create groups of support so that, like Heath said, he did his claim himself. Well, there's a lot of people who don't even know what the forms are. And so if we can build these little enclaves of online, like now everybody knows we can do it, but back in 2008 and 9, people didn't. So we built these little groups online to help each other and educate each other. And so as an instructional designer and an education technologist, having all of those skills, bringing all of that together, I've been able to, increasingly support groups. And a lot of my frameworks and ways of doing things have been duplicated and are supported around the country.
Love that. So you decided to be a connector rather than a disruptor.
Well, I use disruption. Yeah, but I think I am a disruptor, but it's more of from the perspective of I came into the community and where people said, no one is going to get online with you and talk about their stuff. No one is going to connect with you and let you help them. And for sure, no one is going to benefit from this thing that you're talking about doing. And so I think from that perspective, I'm a disruptor in the system part of it, but from the front-facing consumer to consumer, I'm a connector.
And we love that. We love that. Thank you for your hard work. Taniki, hi, good morning. Good
Hi,
afternoon.
great rise and shine, everyone. And if you are watching all over the United States and abroad, good night or good evening. Tonya, thank you so much for having me here. And I'm so honored that Teresa asked if I could be a part of this panel. I'm always excited to have opportunities like these. So it's really great, Tanya, that you allowed all of these professionals and people with wonderful stories to give insightful information, encouragement to those who are trying to overcome or just now facing MST and what's that doing for them in their lives. For me, as a retired Marine, I was first assaulted when the first 2 years I was in the Marine Corps, and I didn't really confront what actually happened to me. I kind of pushed it way down, and sometimes, that's the worst thing to do. But it served me well for a time until it erupted after Iraq. So I have a complex form of PTSD where it is a combination of MST and military combat. And so when it all came crashing down for me was about 11 years into my service, I had to medically discharge because it was just too much. There's a breaking point when you are working and dealing with trauma or trying to suppress your trauma. At some point, it's going to erupt like a volcano. And that's what happened to me back in 2012, where I faced my worst fears head on without the support and without the courage that I needed to face that. And I was in a position where I wanted to end my life, and I did. I attempted to end my life, and through counseling and those type of things with the military, I was able to medically discharge, and then finally live my truth. Finally, come to a place where I could take care of myself, where I didn't have to wear the mask. I didn't have to pretend if I wasn't okay. Like the military trains you to fight on. The mission is top priority. And in a male predominant organization where women are not taught or trained to express themselves or to share their feelings, even the men, it's very difficult to face your trauma because, as you all know on the panel who are familiar with MST, it takes a lot of emotional work to address your issues and the things that the traumatic event has happened to you. So over the years, I started to seek that counseling, got that help that I needed, and then turned it around to help others. I first started going to retreats. Let me back up for a minute. In the Marine Corps, I was the suicide prevention and sexual assault advocate for my unit. So it actually helped me personally because I knew all the steps. I knew everything to do when it came to helping myself, but just not facing the truth that I needed help was I needed to bridge that gap. And when I got out, that's exactly what I began to do, was bridging the gap between knowing myself and connecting with that pain. And in order for it to kind of release and not stay within me. So I began doing that internal work. And once I became healthy enough emotionally, mentally, spiritually, I was able to give back to my community and continue to serve. So helping other veteran men and women who have gone through traumatic events, whether it is combat, military, mostly military sexual trauma. I have a podcast, Pursuing Straight Out the Box. I would say the number one best self-support podcast for veterans because it is an open conversation. And I was so glad to be on Teresa's platform for one of her events talking about MST. And I just believe that as we continue to have those conversations, we're able to just impact people on a more personal level because it is a personal journey. There's no cookie cutter way to approach this. And so for me, it was rewarding, and it made me hold myself accountable because it's almost like the doctor patient, that the doctor is the best type of doctor when they are on the other side first, being a patient, knowing how to talk to someone, knowing what it's like to be vulnerable on the other side, and knowing that, hey, you know what, you can get through it. So I was actually very fortunate to unfortunately be a victim, but turn survivor, and now survivor to thriver. So for me, with my company, JT Inspire, we impact the community. We do sponsor community events to uplift those who are impoverished and who need help in mental health, or I would like to say mental wellness, because it's all about the wellness and the journey in getting there. So I'm very grateful to be able to continue the conversations and have a way to really bring people together and give some insight into how you can become empowered. Because you can listen to people talk all day, but if you can't find the courage enough to implement and step out on your own and advocate for yourself, then you know the information is not so useful. So for me, I love having those open, candid conversations about trauma and how it affects you and what you can do to not just talk about it, but be about it and walk the walk and live a better life. A lot of us are functioning. You have those alcoholics out there who are functioning alcoholics. You know, they go to work 9 to 5, but after work, they are drinking and doing the things that they need to cope. So for me, I didn't want to be a functioning survivor. I wanted to be a thriver and to be able to help my family and my friends be able to recognize the signs when someone needs that help, but also talk more about how to empower yourself. How do you get to the other side where you're no longer surviving, but thriving?
Man, Taniki, I absolutely love everything you said. And again, I appreciate you for being here. One of the lessons that I try to teach with storytelling is to take your audience there with you, wherever you're trying to take them.
Yes.
And I didn't want this to be a superficial conversation, but definitely one that let the audience know why this is so important. So I would like to ask one or two of you to share, because you've already stated you were in a explosive place or you had hit bottom. But I want you to explain what that looks like, because when you are dealing with sexual assault and you're dealing with suppression and inner rage and complex PTSD, these are things that if someone has, one, if you haven't experienced it, you don't know what they're talking about. So it's easy for them to be like, whatever, these people, they're just always complaining, right? But two, if you want to understand why this is so important, you need to trigger something sometimes for people or really take them to that place. So if you don't mind, either one of you, I think I'd like to hear from Heath and anybody else that can kind of talk about what that trauma feels like when you are in those moments where you don't even know what's next. You just don't know. That pain that really doesn't have words to describe. Take me there.
Thanks. It's I'll be honest with you, it's very, very it's not difficult to explain, but it's hard for and you hit it right on the nail, for others to understand um what anybody is going through that has dealt with this. I So I'm the youngest in my family. I have stepbrothers, and growing up we were very close. And um one thing that people don't realize is you go from a normal to a totally different person. And for me, I was always angry. I didn't like men touching me. I didn't like even hugging my own father. I I hated everybody, and the emotional roller coaster that I went through of, my assaulters were men, so you know my sexuality was always in question, and the guilt, the shame, the embarrassment. I held a lot of things in for over 20 years, and I didn't realize, for one, that I had PTSD. I didn't know why I was always angry. It just didn't register that the reason I didn't like men touching me was because I was assaulted. The reason why I couldn't be near men working was because some of my assaults happened at work. A lot of these things, uh, for ones that have never experienced this, they couldn't understand why I would be at work. And I love working with my hands. I love, like, masonry work. I love these type of things. And I'll be at work and a guy will, like, swat me, just goofing around, and I'm like, snapping, ooh, I can't work here no more. And they're like, oh, why would you quit? You had a great job. You were making great money. And it's like, I just couldn't explain the emotional impact that it had on me. And it ruined not just personal relationships, but relationships with my children, because I couldn't understand how to explain things. For me, my spiral, oh my God. So in 2009, I was drinking. I hated so much that I actually was going to commit suicide. I was driving down the road. It was late at night, no seatbelt on, the road I drive all the time. And I was so sick in my head that I was laughing about it. It was like, ha ha, I'm going to hit this tree. Ha ha ha, it's going to serve everybody right. You know, they don't care about me anyways. That's how sick in my mind I was. And I didn't know it. And thankfully it didn't happen. And I think that is kind of was my waking up point too. It was like, oh my gosh, where am I in life? And you know, a lot of things that people don't realize is, so I go to bases and I speak all the time. And some of the things that I talk at when I'm explaining what I go through, because, you know, I go in through details and, you know, I always do the disclaimer in front, you know, some of the stuff I'm talking about is pretty horrible. But I also explain to people, you do not know what the person to the left or right of you has ever been through. You don't. You got to be mindful of what you say, how you react, how you touch somebody, because you just don't know. And the thing is look at the group on here. Something happened to us all within the military. And we're just a small percentage of a group that is just huge. And I may be a man, but you know what? I went through a lot of the same issues as a woman went through. And maybe some things are different, maybe some things aren't. But the thing is until we put this as a human perspective and learn how to work as humans, I'm still going to have these little triggering issues because the left or the right of me, they still don't get it. And they're going to say these things that even though I'm going to therapy and I get help or whatever, it's still going to upset me. And people don't understand, well, why does that upset you? Because you just don't get it. And I apologize. Sometimes I'm like a squirrel and I just like chase that little nut around and wander off the thing. And I hope I answered what you wanted.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing that. I've kind of described dealing with trauma, complex trauma, is like a wound inside of you that no one can get to, that heals a little bit, but easily ripped back open. And the pain dulls, but it never goes away.
That when I'm on bases, I love how you say that. So I explained to them, you see the soldier with the cast, with the sling, crutches, whatever it is, and you know that they're hurt, and you know that something's going to heal. But when they're at PT or whatever, they're going to be limited. You don't see the effects of what the harassment or the assault does because it's in your mind and it's in your body. And it's more mental. Yes, it affects us physically, but you're not seeing that. And people need to be more mindful of that. Could be a cask, that could be the crutch. And it's amazing when you see people get the aha moment when you're saying that, because I love that you said that, because it was like, that's how I try to push that to people, because they're like, well, you sound like you're normal. I'm not normal. I just pretend that I'm normal. You know, I have to sometimes pretend to get through the day, and people don't understand that.
I appreciate that. Anyone else want to share?
Hi. Again, this part is, I think, the hardest part. I think when Trevor Noah asked me this, take me to that moment, you know, it always, you have to remember, you're taking someone back to that moment of when they were actually in a traumatic experience. And so there's going to be that pause or that rapid heartbeat. And I think that's part of it. Like when we are having these conversations, it's not just something that happened like 1,000 years ago. Every moment that we have to think about it, helping someone with a claim, I'm back in the moment. Answering a call, I'm back in the moment. And for me, my moment it was extended, and like someone else said, they had, Taniki said she has complex PTSD. That, you know, even having that diagnosis for me was another way of adding to what I felt was being devalued, right? So dehumanized, devalued, not being able to hold my own space, right? Because now someone else has given me a title and put a name on me and said, this is who you are and what you're going to be for the rest of your life. But in my case with the sexual assaults, I was befriended. I was told by a mentor that they were going to, guide me through this process, this lovely process of being in the military, because I was sharp and I was bright and I had a promising career. So, of course, when someone who has had access to you privately asks to have access to you privately, again, it's not your first nature to say no, even if the place that they're wanting to have access to you is different. So he took me off of the military base to a hotel. I didn't know it was a hotel because, I was 18 years old. It was right before my 19th birthday. And so I was lured there under the premise of celebrating my 19th, my birthday and a promotion, which this person had access to making sure happened. And so that was the first incident. The second incident after that was someone came into my room while I was sleeping, and I woke up to them on top of me. And I thought I was either dreaming or I was misunderstanding what was happening. And so I put it out of my mind because I've already had one rape. It doesn't make sense that this is happening again in some other space. And I didn't know that it was happened until the person came back to me and said, please don't tell anyone what happened. And that's when I had the understanding that not only had I been raped, but now I am not silencing myself. Someone else is coming to me and saying, don't tell. And then the third time that I experienced someone accosting me, I reported it. And when I reported it, I was told that I misunderstood what the person was trying to do for me, because they had went to leadership under the premise, again, of mentorship, to say that they were supporting me getting into my next rank. And so once I reported that, I was sent out on patrol. And my last and final injury, I always preface that I cannot say that I was pushed. I cannot say that I was hit because I do not remember. I only remember waking up at the bottom of an embankment, a ditch, about 40 feet down on Zweibrücken military base, and 3 men looking over the hill at me, not coming to get me, not coming to pull me up or do whatever, but watching me. And so at that point, when my first sergeant came to me and said, you need to get out of the military, at that point, I decided it might be best, because my life was, it was very, to me, I was in more danger than rape. And so, all the retaliation that happened, going from being this sharp, soldier to now, no one wants to work with me because I might tell that they did something to me, being a Black woman and saying that, I'm bad for my race because I reported someone who was Black. I mean, all of these things are things that kind of happened in that space. And so they're hurtful. But the challenge for me is that, again, coming into the space to be helpful to others, I wasn't like everyone else and waited until they got better. I was like, hey, if I can walk a step and somebody is in a ditch, I'm gonna help them out of the ditch and then we'll walk together. If I can run a quarter of a mile and somebody can only walk, 2 steps, I'm gonna do that with them until we can all get to the next step. So I've just been continually in that process. And it really wasn't until my therapist, after 8 years of being in therapy, and I'm still in therapy, folks. I still am in therapy because I think that's the other idea, that we do all this work and that we're not seeking medical attention. If you're service connected, you should be seeking medical, continuous, but she said to me, what do you hope for? And it didn't even occur to me. It had never occurred to me that I had lost hope, that even in doing all of these things, that I was so disconnected, that I had hope for other people. I wanted to see other people well. I wanted to see other people have all these great things, but I had lost hope for myself. And so I don't know if anyone else on the panel can talk about that from the perspective of having chronic post-traumatic stress, but it is another layer that's added to it, like always waiting for the shoe to drop, always looking for like, what's the infraction that's going to happen, and having an aha, there it is, each time. So I think for me, that's been the hardest part of going from being this young person who had like hope and ideas and wanted to do so many things and just excited about life on a continuum, to just like, I'm very stoic now, which is really not my core personality, but I'm stoic. I'm not as happy about things. When things happen that are positive, it's like, oh yeah, that's great, let's move on to the next thing. And I think those are all elements of the pieces of the experience of post-traumatic stress. And so that's what I have to say about that.
I want to jump back to Heath really quick, because what I do know is that you guys, with your organizations, you're trying to make a difference, you're trying to help, you're trying to broaden the horizon for people that this is unfamiliar to, and increase awareness and assistance to those that need it. And we talked about the media. Heath, you said it's been difficult for you to get the kind of attention on outlets that you have, fought for. What do you think is that barrier between them either listening to your story or not? Some have and some haven't. So speak to me about that.
So, some of the comments I've received from media folks is male sexual assault does not sell. It doesn't sell newspapers. Nobody wants to hear about it. And give you an example. So last year I was actually at Fort Hood. It took me 4 years to get the New York Times to actually do a piece on male sexual assault. The reporter was at Fort Hood, and one of the pictures he actually took was, and it was actually in the New York Times, was the commanding officer yelling at me with his hand out stretched at me, yelling. And the journalist didn't realize that's what the commander was doing. And I have reached out to numerous folks, when the Vanessa Guillen thing happened and all that, and like, listen, this is the traumatic experience I, as a survivor, doing a training at the installation, had to deal with. And they're like, well, we don't care because you're not a woman. I'm like, what? I was in New York Times. Those are the pictures showing me getting screamed on. And they're like, well, you don't sell. You're old news, and find us a new male survivor. And it's like, listen, when you hear nonstop, and I'm not saying this to browbeat anybody or anything like that, but when you constantly hear MST as a woman's issue, MST as only on that type of a platform, you have males who already are embarrassed, already having issues, and they're withdrawing even more. And so it's harder to find male survivors to really want to come forward because, for one, the media really doesn't want to talk about it. For two, the media constantly keeps trying to make it a woman's issue instead of a human's issue. And it makes the men like, so when we're talking about a media platform, you saw Vanessa Guy, and her stuff was like nonstop. I mean, they're still talking about it. And you have another person just a few weeks later who had reported, was transferred, and they say he hung himself. But very, very little media on that. And when asked why, they're like, his family doesn't want it pushed. The Congress doesn't want it pushed. Why not? It was a life taken also. So I think the media itself wants to pick and choose what it thinks will sell. And for me, that is very harmful when you're trying to raise awareness on an issue like this. Pick and choose is not an option. We should be reporting, whether it's old news, new news, middle news, it's human lives. It's people that suffered and went through these horrible experiences. You know, I've met folks that are still, you know, I go to the USO a lot because of my traveling. I met some folks at the USO that were from the Korean War who were survivors. And I was like, whoa, you know, if you look at it, I mean, this is just a thing that is constantly happening. And the media needs to step up in my eyes and be more forceful in calling the military out on changing things, the Pentagon out on changing things. Sorry, I can go on all day and I won't, but that's my take on things.
So let's go around the room then and really address how you feel the media plays a role in how sexual assault is dealt with in the military and how it affects your business and how you are getting the word out with the work that you are doing. Taniki?
I would love to address this one. Thank you. So for the segue. I think the reason why the media has this, I don't know, insensitive approach to how they address the real issues with military sexual trauma or just rape, saying rape, molestation, those type of scary, dark words make people so uncomfortable. It's not palatable. Right now, you know, the media wants the entertainment. That's what it's there for. People have a short attention span, and to listen to stories that, quite frankly, are unnerving. It shows the ugliest parts of humanity and what people are capable of. So it makes them uneasy, nervous, downright feeling disgusting, wanting to throw up. So when you have that kind of physical reaction to imagining what could happen to a person that you love, or if it did happen to you, to relive that, people tend to want to avoid that. So I love the fact that he shared his story and he's advocating for male sexual assault, because I just can't even understand how it could be old news when, it hasn't even been told yet. Not with the respect and care that it deserves, much less the women who were silenced in the military back when the military first came about and they started merging and training with men. And so there's a lot to unpack here still. And so I think the biggest thing with the media is making it palatable in that storytelling form. When you can connect with someone by giving them, it's not about vivid images. I think we all need to be courageous enough to listen and do it justice, because there are amazing stories out there where you talk about sex trafficking. I mean, just horrible things. I was a child that was sexually abused before I came into the military. And so not even hearing children's stories and understanding that this is happening everywhere. And so I think with the collective care of community and wanting to be brave enough amongst all of us to say, you know what, this is not an easy topic to discuss, but I'm willing to stand in the fight with you. I'm willing to give that much, a listening ear, to figure out how we can help those and understand it better. Because I go back to the functioning alcoholic, and I'm just going to give you a description of what that looked like for me, struggling with sexual abuse since I was raped early on in my career from a Marine that was one rank higher than me. It was a date rape. And my sister told me about warnings in the clubs when you're young and you're going out there, in the military. It's kind of like it's a new experience. So I think Brigette had said she was 18 or 19 when it happened. I was around the same age. I was 19. So I was still young, still trying to figure out my sexuality as a
Uh-oh, I think she got stuck there.
young woman. You're trained to trust. You're trained to trust your brother or sister in arms. And so in that, you're not thinking, okay, so some of these people, I'm trying to get away from the abuse that I endured as a child and being around that, not thinking, you know what, everyone, all these people come from different walks of life, and predators do exist in the military. Those type of people, thieves, murderers, I mean, they're all here because we are all part of a huge mixing melting pot of human beings. So you can't quite possibly think that the military is the getaway to all getaways from all the wrong that is done because of a creed. That our creed is honor, courage, and commitment. But not everyone that comes in and joins the military has honor. They are not committed, or they are committed to themselves. And the courage to tell or to not lie and to be upfront is just not there. So not everyone is a sheep, or I wouldn't say not for a dumbed down person, but docile or non-violent in that way. Some people are wolves, and they join the military, and they don't tell you this. They don't tell you this because that's not part of the mission. So they teach you how to be a soldier, an airman, a Marine, and a sailor, but they don't teach you the parts that what to look out for, the red flags. So this particular gentleman slipped something in my drink, and the whole night I was raped. I tried my best to fight off, but my body went numb, and I couldn't. All I could do is I could see, but I couldn't move. I didn't have any bodily functions like to move my hands or to fight. And inside, something died. The part of me that was a fighter, that came from the streets of California and all of the over the East Coast and all over SoCal, the fighter in me died because I think it was a survival mechanism. You know what? I can't physically fight. So in order for me to subjugate myself to this abuse in this moment, I think that was a way that my mind just willingly gave up and surrendered so that I would not snap, so to speak. But I think in that when I refused to address what happened, that was me trying to reconvince myself that, okay, I'm trying to get back what I had, the fighter in me, but not addressing that in that moment. I lost something, and I didn't know how to get it back. And so I had a huge chip on my shoulder. And then another part to that with men, you're not going to talk to your mom or your sister. You don't want to hear that your sister, aunt, cousin, is going through that. When I've been around lots of men, when you start talking about who they love personally, and say, if this was your sister and she was being sexually harassed at work like this, what would you do? And they would, I would go right up to that guy and punch him in the face. I would fight for her. Well, imagine your sister right now walking into an office and there's sex being on the laptop, and all the guys are sticking around talking about, yeah, shake that in the middle of the day. Now, they said you shouldn't be drinking before 11 a.m. So, I mean, this is unprofessional. And I think another reason why the climate of how military sexual trauma is treated is because of the environment. It's bred and fostered amongst the men as a rite of passage. And the women who are hearing it as well, for me, I saw a lot of, you want to get along with these guys. You want to be a part of the camaraderie. Otherwise, you're ostracized. If you say, well, that's inappropriate. Oh, well, now she's a bitch. Or, I'm sorry, I know we're live, but this is, I don't normally cuss, but this is what is said either to your face or behind your back. And now you're no longer a part of the community that you sacrifice for your country to be a part of. And so it's hard to connect with people who think like that, or think that that type of language is okay. And then when you try to take it up to your commander or your higher ups, they sweep it under the rug because it's a blot. It's a stain on the command. And even if they put the commander says, you know what, I don't tolerate that, we're not going to deal with that, it still trickles down, and people start getting agitated, and it comes down to the lowest level, to your office or your subdivision, and it still goes on. Now, I had the honor of serving with some honorable men who stood up in the face of sexual harassment or what have you. But you don't hear a lot of those stories, because there's, for every one person that says, that's not okay, there's like 15, 20. So it's an uphill battle that cannot stop, and you can't let that stop you from doing the right thing. But if you see something wrong, you should say something, no matter the consequences. And I think once I realized what happened to me, I started speaking up more, which highlighted me more, which agitated people more. And then, so they didn't care if I had PTSD or I was struggling that day. It was just another reason to say, you know what, she's no good. She shouldn't be a Marine. She's incompetent, or when I had memory loss because of severe stress, you would think that your Marine fellow counterpart would look out for you, but no, they exploited me, because I didn't know I was suffering from post-traumatic stress after combat, but they didn't want to help me out or carry a buddy like they were carrying each other, because I was the whistleblower. And sometimes when you're the whistleblower, you get into more trouble. So it deters people from even wanting to speak up.
Taniki.
Yes,
So-
I'm sorry, Tonya. Go ahead.
Oh, no, real quick. So how does the media, do they help this situation, or do they harm? Do they enhance the ability to be able to magnify these messages and these stories, or is it more harmful when they get involved?
I say it is harmful in the way that they broadcast. I commend those actresses and people who have spoken out with the Me Too movement. But if you watched how the Me Too movement was put out there, it was a joke. People started already, already trying to say, well, there was a lot of victim shaming, a lot of that, and there was no real advocacy from others who could have made a difference and stepped in and said that there's wrong. All we heard were a lot of stories, but no one else stepping in who may be very much removed from the situation, advocating for some of these women in a ferocious way. We should have been, I think, campaigning better to advocate and no more victim shaming. So I don't like the way that the media portrays it, but I do think the Me Too movement gave another platform for people to get angry, for people to start saying, you know what, this is not right, and we need to stand up and speak out more about this. So it did give some voice to that and allowed us to have more conversations like these. This is counted as media. This right here in its truest and raw form is counted as media. So if we have more conversations like this, and not so far removed from superstars and people telling, stories that go nowhere, no one is being held accountable. People are getting off and getting off in court from not being held accountable. And so it kind of deters that. But I think right here, as we are telling our stories and validating some of these voices, I think that's where it's really going to turn the tide and change how media portrays military sexual trauma, rape, and abuse, period.
Teresa, your thoughts?
I feel that, at least for me in my experience, back in '94, when MST was first, they were doing experimental therapy through the VA system here in San Diego, California. And I was asked to be interviewed by the local, by CBS News. And I was like, hell yeah, because I was angry and nobody was hearing, we didn't hear anything about it. Nobody ever, they wanted to keep it under the rug. It was shameful, blah, blah, blah. And so I was scared shitless. they said, you can be blurred out. We can disguise your voice. We could not put your name up there. And I said, no, I want them to know I'm a real person. Okay. And that this really happened. I am not ashamed of what happened, even though everybody, put their shame on me about it. I'm not ashamed. And this needs to get out there. And I also was on radio stations, just putting it out there, because that's all we had back in 94, really. Most people did not have, well, we just didn't have it, online social media, really. So that was, for me, that was a positive experience. And the journalist there was very supportive. They didn't get into the blood and gore. What they were really looking at was saying, this is happening, wake up.
I appreciate it. Kitty? You're on silent.
This panel really has been an eye-opening experience from a standpoint of a reminder for myself. I used to work in news, in media. So the job is to entertain, but educate and inform. Media outlets come to veterans and look for veterans to help share stories in regards to recognizing those fallen soldiers, our heroes, our comrades, Memorial Day, unfortunately, and Veterans Day. However, military personnel, active duty, veteran, are professionals in every industry. And so we chose to take an oath to protect our country and the freedoms for our friends and families, foreign and domestic. Some of us right now have family members who are serving and who will not be with their loved ones during the holidays, during the pandemic. And it is time now that media, if you choose to tell the story of MST, sexual assault, to be allies. We want you to be allies now. We want you to dig a little bit deeper and ask those harsh questions. If it looks like a duck, it acts like a duck, it's a duck, period. And so that's the part, and I understand that, so far as jurisdiction, when it comes to cases that are on base, there are limits to what media professionals can do and access. However, it's important that we peel back the layers and really have a conversation how you can be alliances for military personnel and their families when they're suffering. We have cases ongoing right now. One case in Point, Lavinia Johnson, unfortunately, still unsolved. Unfortunately, she was a victim of assault. However, the Army deemed her case as a suicide. There's more information that really needs to be looked at, and her family has advocated on her behalf for many years. And so in light of, we have technology, we have more resources. In the case of Vanessa Gilliam, her family members were relentless on finding out what happened to her. And I believe, as you know, my desire has always been advocating for the military veteran. And I first heard of the case with Brigette McCoy and heard her story on C-SPAN, giving her testimony of what happened to her. I mean, brought me to my knees. And then when I reached out to her, went out and found out that not only had we been raised and grew up in the same city, ended up going to the same school, and I'm just like, okay, you know, there's more connection to this to individuals. This whole panel that's here with me, there's a connection here, and so as a parent of a service member serving, I also have cousins who also serve. Right now, it's like, you know, I need media allies, period. And so that's the conversation that I hold dear and look forward to in the future of happening when it comes to military and the media.
Heath, you brought up the young man that was found when they were looking for Vanessa Guillem. I would like for you to talk me through another case that has come up, military sexual assault or a death, that triggered something in you. So another powerful story, because I don't want it to get lost on the fact that maybe the media isn't always doing what you think they should. But if there has been a story that touched you, then they're doing something right, right? We're trying to really look at how they're telling these stories, connecting with the larger audience, and how it can be impactful, one way or the other, whether it was good or bad. We're looking for opportunities to improve, right? I'm always looking for solutions. So give me a story in the media that has touched you or triggered something in you,
So,
and kind of
um,
how it moved you forward.
just recently, Supreme Court case, Harmony Allen, friend of mine, she, her assaulter's case got overturned, and then they took it to Supreme Court and they won unanimously 8-0 in favor of her, and her assaulter is going now back to serve his time. That was huge for me, and what I also where my mind has been with that is it has given me hope knowing that I now maybe possibly can go after my assaulters because I know their names, I know where they live, I know everything about them, you know. And it's like statute of limitations is gone, I can go after them, and it was just so huge for me. And also knowing that it wasn't just huge for me, it was huge for all survivors, because now a door is open for all of us. And I was so excited. I messaged Harmony. I'm like, oh my God, congratulations. I'm so excited for you. And then I had a Zoom call. Brigette was on it with me, and I was driving and I had to pull over so I could be on the call. And it was just so amazing hearing the aspects of what they had to do to go through this case, because Protect Our Defenders had a big role in helping Harmony. And it was just amazing knowing that even though I was a tiny little sliver of that, Brigette was just a tiny little sliver of that, the meaning of what that case will mean to so many. And I have goosebumps right now. I'm sorry. I know I can't show them to you, but that was something where I was very applauding of the media, because so many media outlets covered that, and it was such a huge, huge win. And it's like, oh my gosh, the media is like really putting this out there, which was phenomenal for so many reasons. But for me, it was knowing that others now have hope.
Brigette, same question. As powerful as your story is, I mean, if there's something out there that has touched you, please let me in on it.
So I think for me, Lavina Johnson's narrative and her parents' narrative always touched me. I think the first time I heard Mr. Johnson and Mr. Johnson speak about their daughter and the fact that, the police, them coming to report that she was dead, It always takes me back to that moment when I called my parents and I said, if something happens to me, spend every bit of my SGLI money finding out what happened to me. Don't believe them that it was an accident, that I hurt myself, anything like that, because none of that is true. And my father, he's my stepdad, but he's been my dad my whole life. He served in the military as well, and I could hear it in his voice, like he knew what I was saying, but he didn't want to grapple with the thoughts of that, and he just said, like, be safe and all of that. And so when I heard her father speaking, I said that could have been my dad, like trying to, you know, get people to sign on and find out what happened, because the reports clearly show there was no way she could have done any of the things that were done to her to herself. There's no way. And so the fact that everyone has been so silent about it was the primary reason why I went and testified. Like, there was so much stuff behind me testifying. I didn't necessarily want to testify. I felt like if I just made a statement and just left it be, that should be enough. But what I recognized as a Black woman was that there were no voices that looked like me. There were no voices of my age. There were no voices with my background. And for sure, I was almost about to cuss, there were no voices of women who were Black sitting on those panels and having conversations about what was happening. Now, I don't know if it had to do with they couldn't do it, they didn't want to do it, or they weren't asked to, but I had to make a decision. And so for me, Lavina Johnson's narrative always is kind of a sore spot for me. Even when things get passed and approved, I'm happy, but I'm like, where is the justice going to be for Black women in the military? How many stories have to come out about us being raped and murdered and killed before someone actually makes our lives a priority, especially when we're the ones that go in and serve and fight? I'm not saying other people don't serve and fight. That's never my narrative. My organization is about all women, all service times, all service branches. Like, we are a diverse population. At the same time, there are times when a focus needs to be brought onto something. And I would say that Lavina Johnson's narrative would be that. The other thing that I would say is that when we're having these discussions as a people group, MST survivors, when someone like Heath steps up and says, "This is my experience," by God, let the man have his experience and tell you what it was. Listen to him. Be empathetic. Hear what he has to say without making it about you and what he's saying about you or your idea. I'm a Black woman. If I bring a narrative about my experience as a Black woman in the MST community, by God, let me have the opportunity to have my voice. Don't call me a victim or a media whore or any of those things, because I'm bringing the narrative forward, not for just myself, but for others who are like me. And so I think the other part of that, if I can, talk about that, is that part where I think Teresa was saying something about how the narratives, in my case, the narrative of like being a survivor, a thriver, or what. When I came into the public eye, they wanted you to look as horrible as you possibly could, right? And anyone who's followed me any number of years know I don't do that. That's not how I get down anyway. So I'm not showing up representing Brigette and let alone other people without being professional, at least at some professional decorum. And then the fact of being called a victim, and so language and positioning are important. And I think sometimes the media is so hung up on presenting this narrative so that they can get the views, that they lose the opportunity to humanize the story, which would bring more people along, because there are intersections to these narratives of military sexual trauma. Someone's I'm sorry, I'm saying your name wrong. Taniki said, was talking about her childhood experiences. There are women who are raped in the military who are wives. There are children who are raped in the military who are children. They're raped by somebody who's serving. Please don't get hung up on if it's a man or a woman, if she's Black or if she's white, if she's all of these things, because the bigger picture is there are people being injured, their lives are being inextricably damaged by this the what's happening. And if we could tell this narrative of there's a perpetrator, and this is my narrative I always present, the perpetrator is wearing the wrong uniform. They get to wear they're in a military uniform and they need to be in orange jumpsuit. That's always that's where I stand. I'm not moving back from that. So if we can begin to present that narrative and not get hung up on the infighting of who's got to say what, and really work together to be collaborative in the messaging. He speaks, he goes and talks, and he presents people. Kitty's presenting people. I know Taniki's presenting people. All of the narratives, and Teresa's doing the same. I feel like if we use these opportunities to say, hey, I'm Brigette and I'm talking, but at the same time, Heath has a narrative and he has something to say as well. And, you need to talk to him. If we begin to build each other, then we can get much farther than everyone trying to have these fiefdoms, right? And saying, I've got the fiefdom of the Black women and you've got the fiefdom of the males and all of that. Because the whole thing is, it's about fixing this for everyone, not for one specific demographic within this demographic. And let's be clear, there's probably at least 250,000 to 500,000 people who have been impacted by sexual assault directly. We cannot even talk about the people who have been impacted indirectly, the families, the children, and all of that. So for me, Lavina Johnson stands very firm in my mind. And I feel like someone needs to absolutely dig that story up and make that a story in light of what's happened with I Am Vanessa Gillian and the bill and all of those things. I personally feel like I Am Vanessa Gillian bill needs to have something included in it that talks about Lavina Johnson and moves that narrative forward. But that's my own personal feeling, and it doesn't represent any of the organizations that I support. So yeah, that's forgive me because I'm like Heath. I'll get it. I'll go down that train track and woo woo. I'll keep going.
One of my sayings, I always say, we're better together, and women are better together, and this cry that we all are advocating for, and the way that you approach your business and your ability to unite not just individuals but other organizations to this one cause instead of everybody kind of being all over the place. I love how you bring everything back to the center of the core of what the cry is and what the call to action is. You bring it all back to the center, and you take all of the different cultures, like we talked about before, and you bring it together. And I just love that, because that allows for them to never be able to divide and conquer, because they'll do that, right? To minimize the cry and to minimize the call for action, they'll try to divide. So instead, you do the work to bring all of those that are advocating for more awareness and, of course, solutions to the center. So I applaud the work that you're doing, and I love your methodology and how you're kind of taking that all under your belt. I love it. I just love it. So Taniki, give me a story in the media currently that triggers you, that has been powerful, that really resonates, and if it was good or bad.
Well, I'd like to make a note that I had the privilege of going up to the White House and speaking personally, sharing my story and advocating for women veterans' rights. The more that these stories are told, government is listening. The VA has done a better job in representing our women with mental health and specifically with military sexual trauma. At one point in time, you wouldn't get any benefits for being injured. He actually said it, it's an inner wound, it's an inner disability that the VA wouldn't recognize at one point in time. So women were not able to get help. And so it does open up the door for now men to share their story and get help professionally, holistically through the VA. And so as I had the pleasure of being up there in Washington, talking to Congress, the House of Representatives about the Deborah Sampson Act, that was really great to know that bill passed, and now women are able to better be served with the VA, and highlight some of the traumatic things that have happened either with counseling, holistic acupuncture, a lot of the things that are opening up for women to begin their journey with healing, to me was a impactful, and to be even a part of that, and to know that sharing my story at Capitol Hill was phenomenal and impacted in such a way where that bill got passed, with other women sharing their stories as well. So the media did a great job in supporting that and talking about how Congress, they are being very sensitive. If it hasn't trickled down to active duty and the way that they incorporate mental wellness as part of the fight, y'all can hashtag that, mental wellness as part of the fight, and just say, hey, if we have at this level the survivors of these traumatic things talking about it more candidly and bravely, and then we have at the very top the government in which the military is serving is passing acts like the Deborah Sampson Act. And so there's the going back to the bridging of the gap. We have to somehow allow our stories and then the government support to come together right there in the middle, where now active duty military takes it for action to see that, okay, this is something that we can curtail before this veteran is injured and have to make a claim. How can we stop some of these incidences from happening and start asking the right questions, and then implementing the right incentives, the right laws, or what we would say in the military, admins, to allow higher ups to feel more comfortable with addressing these instead of sweeping it under the rug. Sometimes it's not just the act that is traumatic, it's the lack of support and what happens to that veteran after the incident happens that just totally rips them apart. And so if we can better support them before they get out of the military, maybe acts like these, the Deborah Sampson Act wouldn't have to be, what it is today. But I just wanted to say that one very much impacted me, being a part of it this year and last year, having that come up. And I'm already hearing a lot of women veteran in my circle partaking and getting the help that they need because of the Deborah Sampson Act.
I love that. Well, listen, I appreciate you guys being so open and honest about your trauma, about your fight, about your feelings and emotions in the fight, because I think that it gets, that voice gets shunned a little. You're not just fighting a fight for someone else. This is a personal and deep seated fight that draws in so much energy and emotion and passion, because you understand the depths in which a solution is needed, right? It's different if you work for an organization and you're doing your job. This is a personal fight. It seems that you're all in, and the organizations that you run and the work that you put in, I applaud you for it. As we go around the room, I would love for you to let everyone know what you have coming up and how they can stay in touch with you, and lend to any of the efforts that you have going on. Let's go ahead and start with you, Heath.
Sorry, my mouse froze. The only thing I have is holidays and some relaxation for January, unless I get some other calls. But normally, I do trainings for the Criminal Investigation Division at Fort Leonard Wood 9 times out of a year. COVID slowed it down. I actually went back this month for the first time this year. I go back in February. Best way to get a hold of me is I have a website. It's www.heathtalks.com. And eventually, when I feel like getting off my keister, I might start a podcast. I'm just kind of not wanting to overdo myself. So, in a nutshell, that's about it. I'm waiting for COVID to clear up. I'm just outside of DC, so once it clears up, I can start doing some legislation pushes again. But other than that, that's it. Thank you.
Taniki?
Thank you for allowing me to be here. I just want to say that again. I'm just very honored, Tonya, that you would put this together. You did all the legwork. And for those who are listening, I hope you took notes. I hope that you get connected with Tonya, because if she's doing things like this and having these candid discussions, I mean, I think that your life could only be ever so much more positively impacted by connecting with her and the rest of the professionals here on this panel. What I have coming up with my company, JT Inspire, of course, my podcast sponsored by my company, Pursuing Straight Out the Box. We have some dynamic stories. We talked about storytelling the whole entire time. So we have some professionals on my podcast that are very candid, very open, and give some insightful tips on how to overcome traumatic events while still succeeding, still winning at life and living it fully and better. So you want to tune in to season 4 that's coming up for next year. We also have my family and I, when we talked about changing the narrative over the media, we actually have a documentary about our lives, for me being a female veteran, having children. And from their perspective on a major cable network, and that's going to be coming out next year. So if you stick with me, you'll know I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at TRRichard4, and my podcast page on IG is Pursuing Straight Out the Box. I'll be doing some more panel discussions and sharing information how to get up with me for those events coming soon. Thank you.
I love that. And if you don't mind, Heath, Taniki, Brigette, make sure that anything that you do have coming up that we speak about, you put it on the Sand and Shores page, because I know those that are out, and you guys have plenty of comments. So after this is over, make sure you head over there and check out some of the comments. You guys are surrounded by lots of support, but also some questions that I think should be answered. Someone asked a question about DOD. And things of that nature. So make sure you check out the comments, get back to them. But I love to support all that you are doing. So make sure that anything you want, you go ahead and post on that page, because we want to make sure everybody knows about the amazing stuff you guys are doing. Miss Kitty, what's next for you?
Well, I'm looking forward to part 2 of our discussion, honestly. I am excited to be moving into 2021, working with WVSJ. I've been a senior ambassador, so I'm looking forward to some of our events that we have going on for our female veterans. Also, I'm working to work with other media professionals. I just want to commend my former colleagues that are still working in news, and those media professionals that have given their best in ensuring the stories were told correctly regarding MST. I'm looking forward to collaborating with anyone, honestly, in the fight, and also getting involved more with legislation too as well, to ensure that those that are serving in the military can continue to serve with pride and not have to face situations like these. You can find me on my website, KLH Media Group, also on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. And thank you, Tonya, for having this, the opportunity to work with you to have this come to fruition.
I love this. And next part too, we'll have more media to kind of weigh in on some of the stuff that we talked about. Okay. Teresa, what's next for you?
Okay. Well, a couple of months ago, I co-found Veterans for Leadership, nonprofit organization to provide scholarships for leadership training. And the reason why I became passionate about this particular foundation is because through conventional therapy and all those kind of things, and the VA system, and someone had, I forget who said, mentioned this to Nikki, I think, where there was nothing available for women. We didn't have a clinic, we didn't have nothing. So I went in the first time and it was horrible. But anyway, when oh crap, I went squirrely. Hold on. So okay, so my point is that so I was taught how to manage my triggers, okay? And so I was still waiting for the next shoe to drop, and then knowing that I had a plan in place and what to do, and all that, and finally I got to the point after, 15 years of doing it this way and being jacked up on antipsychotics and all this kind of stuff, that, I wanted more. And so this leadership training had actually brought me to a point where I can shift quickly from my trigger mode into back to reality and a healthy state. So that is providing scholarships for that. Right now, we've started a GoFundMe. We're still working on the legal aspects and for getting it done. You can contact me on my email. I had put it right there if you can see it. Anyway, but not only are we providing this for United States veterans, but we are including Canada. Sean Anderson is my co-founder, and he represents Canada. I represent the United States, and we are inviting all allied forces of Canada and United States veterans to participate with this, or just reach out to me if you need any kind of help with military sexual trauma.
I love it. Thank you. Miss Brigette.
Well, thank you so much, Tonya, for having us here. Thanks to Heath and Teresa and Taniki and, Kitty, everyone being on this panel. This is like my dream. I hate that we had to get to the pandemic to get folks to exercise the ability to do this. But I'm very, very excited that we are here and that we have a voice and that we're getting together in creative and innovative ways to make sure that the message gets out, right? So I probably did a horrible job, and Kitty will probably fuss at me later about promoting WVSJ. So let me say this. Women Veteran Social Justice Network was established in 2009. We were an online virtual network of women veteran support. And so our mission is to identify, connect, and empower women veteran and help to empower women so that there's no gaps. So we're all eras, all service times, all service branches. And sometimes people say that's redundant, but for those of you who serve, know that sometimes you can be of a certain service era and not meet the criteria for a certain program because you don't meet that era, or you didn't serve long enough in an era to meet the criteria. So we felt like it would be important to remove all of that, right? We probably are one of the few organizations that have screened more than 4 documentaries related to women veterans. So we'll be screening another documentary, 688, which is a documentary about African-American women who served during World War II. We just finished screening Medicating Normal, and we have some dates that'll be coming up. If you follow us on WVSJ, our Facebook page, which is facebook.com, 4 WVSJ, look in our events, follow our events. We post everything in the events there. So we'll be doing another screening. We also have partnered with a Moral Injury Support Network for service women. We've hosted up to this date 5 events this year. And we'll be hosting 2 other events next year in support of women who've experienced sexual trauma. Now we say women, but it's chaplains and first responders, and men and women are being supported through those programs. We also have a food program that we're developing locally. We'd love to work with other organizations to help to establish that on a national level. And we also have a toy drive going on. We've collected the toys, now we're distributing them. So if anyone has anyone local to Atlanta, Georgia, and they know that they could benefit from having a few items, some gift cards and things like that. We're always doing a lot of stuff. And so that sounds like my that's like January. That's not the whole year. That's just January and February. And the only way we were able to do that is through our wonderful, wonderful training and development program that includes our ambassadors and senior ambassadors, which we teach women how to go from the military to the C&B suite. And we teach them how to leverage digital tools to do that. So I'd love to get with Teresa if you're working on that. We can help maybe to develop some things. We've actually created some mobile learning technology that we launched the end of last month. And so we'll be working with instructional design professionals to do mobile learning. So we got a lot of stuff going on, and that's just like I said, January and February. So I'll definitely keep everyone posted if you want to hear all that, because it's a lot. But Kitty's involved, and we've got about 25 or so other ambassadors all over the country. Oh, I forgot. Oh, we're having an online, we're doing online arts and basically therapeutic arts workshops for self-care. We always have a retreat at the beginning of the year, at the middle of the year and the end of the year, because Veterans Day is so weird and we start having people having so much going on. And so we couldn't do that because of COVID. And so we felt it was important to still maintain some of the work that's there. So we'll be doing that as well. So there's some coaching that I do. You can follow me on facebook.com, She Heroic. That's what I'm known as She Heroic, Brigette McCoy. And so there's all that. And you can also follow us on LinkedIn. So there's plenty of social media out there to connect to. Everyone on the panel would love to connect with you and figure out how we can help to bring the narratives of veterans who served and have experienced sexual trauma forward in an appropriate way. So that's my information. Thank you so much.
She Heroic. You do kind of look like a superhero, Brigette. I could go for that. Yeah, I like it. So the cool thing is, I haven't been doing this just during the pandemic. We are here to serve the purpose of magnifying your message through the media or any other platform, because we recognize that many stories do not get the attention that they need. So however we need to collaborate, however we need to elevate and educate others in what you're doing and the good work that you are putting out to enhance the quality of life for others. That's why we are here. That's why Sand and Shores is here. So I appreciate everyone and their time today. I appreciate your openness, your honesty. Please make sure we stay informed. We love a good collaboration or helping you get that message out, expanding your current resources. Please add us to what that looks like, and we will do our best to contribute to magnifying those messages. So we bid you adieu. We hope that you have an amazing rest of your day, and we will definitely stay in touch.
Thank you, Tonya. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Tonya. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.